You're listening to the AmWritingFantasy podcast. In today's publishing landscape, you can reach fans all over the world. Query letters are a thing of the past. You don't even need a literary agent. There is nothing standing in the way of making a living from writing. Join two best-selling authors who have self-published more than 20 books between them. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Autumn Burt and Jasper Schmidt.
Hello, I'm Jasper.
And I'm Autumn.
This is episode 100 of the AmWritingFantasy podcast. Imagine that. We made it to 100 episodes.
Oh, I'm just tickled. That's pretty much a success story right there.
Yeah, I actually prepared a suitable sound clip. Are you ready for it, Autumn?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, here we go.
That's perfect.
It's pretty amazing. I don't know what to say. 100 episodes. It's a good. I mean, this is then the dedicated Ask Us Anything episode in celebration of it being number 100. So thank you to all of you who sent in some questions. It was great, and we are looking forward to dive in. So this is going to be good.
Yes, I can't wait. And then we got some good questions, so we have all that lined up. And like I said, I'm just so excited. It's not because I've had like 6 cups of tea today. I swear, I'm just thrilled that we actually made it to 100 episodes.
Yeah. But before we get into all of that, how are things with you, Autumn?
Good. Would you believe? And this is a huge confession. So I'm writing my 23rd book. I finally, for the first time ever in my life, I joined Nanowrimo. So
I saw that. Yeah. I saw you posting about it.
Yeah, I joined 7 days late. So I know for some people that would be pretty much a death knell. But I figured I finished the plotting. It's the first time in my life that I had a new book I was going to start, and it was November. So I went for it, and we just passed, while we're recording this, we just passed the middle of the month, and guess my word count.
25.
Oh, you're so close. I was at 22,000, so I made up at least. I'm pretty close to making up that first week where I didn't do any writing, I just did plotting. So I think I'm going to survive my first NaNoWriMo and hopefully get my badge, and I'll at least be able to say finally that I did one.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I've never done that, so that's pretty cool.
It is. It's actually been a lot of fun. I've met some other authors in Vermont, where I'm living, and other ones online. I've got some writing buddies and people I can chat with, which we all need more authors we can chat with and share woes. So it's been really a ton of fun, and I'm glad I joined. So how are things on your side of the Atlantic?
Well, it's good. Normally, I would probably be complaining because all senior soccer matches has been cancelled due to COVID-19 again. So normally, I would be complaining about that, but actually, I think it's a good thing because it gives me more time to prepare to move houses. Yeah, at least now I don't spend four hours every Saturday in refereeing, so that's pretty good.
That's true. You've got your plate pretty much full between stuff that we've got going on. Oh, a family, a job, moving. That might have been a little bit too much of a crunch time for you.
It is a bit crazy, I must admit, and even the boys felt that it was a bit. They were all the youngest almost got a bit stressed. He said the other day, "I'm getting stressed." He said because they've been busy organizing all their Lego because they have a ton of it, and they're getting older, so they don't really play with it. So they decided that they want to put it out for sale, which is fine. So, but then they have to organize it all and put it in bags and everything that belongs together and stuff like that. So, so they've been pretty busy, and they've been trying to get it done before we move. So, that was why the youngest said, "I'm getting stressed. I have so much Lego I have to organize."
Oh, the woes and problems of a child! I just wish. They're solvable.
But But mid-December, we need to be out of the house. But we do get access to the apartment the 1st of December. So I'm actually looking forward to the move, even though we are going to have a lot less space in the new place. But Yeah, but hey, the apartment is next to the beach, so I won't complain, right?
I will be angry at you if you complain. I have spent one winter next to the ocean in Myrtle Beach, and I miss it very nostalgically now. So I think that is so awesome.
A week on the internet with the Am Writing Fantasy podcast.
So we never ever talk politics on this podcast, and I'm not going to do it now either.
Okay, my heart just skipped a beat. I'm like, oh no, where is this going?
No. I'm not going to do it. I just wanted to mention that I have really noticed how the US election impacted the activity in the Am Writing Fantasy Facebook group.
Oh, yeah, I think that is true. It is. No one's been unhappy with each other, but I've definitely seen some stuff online where even book sales in the 20 to 50K Facebook group has mentioned that a lot of people have seen some tanking and lots of less activity going on. So I do think that is what is going on in the world.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. It's not because anybody has been arguing in the Facebook group. That was not what I meant. I more just meant that there's a lot less posts and comments in there than normally. That's perfectly understandable, but it just stood out to me so much that I noticed it. But if you, dear listener, have not joined the group yet, and by the way, normally it is very active.
Oh, very normally. Normally we can't keep up.
Yeah, so head on over to Facebook and type in Am Writing Fantasy in the search field among the groups, and you will find us.
Yes. Yeah. And it's definitely, I mean, I'm not a huge Facebook fan, but I would stay on Facebook just for Am Writing Fantasy because there are some great folks over there and fantastic questions and interactions. So I do love when I get a chance, when I do turn on Facebook and put on my Facebook corral before going in, I get to spend some time in there, which is lovely.
Yeah, I don't like Facebook either, but I like the group and I like to run ads. But that's pretty much it.
So that's pretty much, keeps us all, we're there because we are authors and who we are. We end up being there.
Yeah, okay. So anything else to mention, Autumn, before we dive into all our wonderful questions?
Well, only that if you happen to go into the group or look me up on Instagram, Twitter, wherever you want to try to find me, because I swear I've just joined Discord because of Nanowrimo. So what I needed was another social media account. But if you look me up, because you can't find it on Facebook, they just released the Fantasy Roundtable I was a part of, and that was a lot of fun. So if you're a new author and you're looking for some fantasy writing tips from 3 fantasy authors, give me a shout and I will send you the link. It's on YouTube. So, it's a fun thing to check out and get some advice and laugh with us women as we share.
Yeah, and if you remember to do so, Autumn, you could also add the link in the show notes.
Yeah, I will do my best.
Yeah.
And on to today's topic.
So we have some great questions lined up, but before we get into those, I thought it would be fun if we each reflected a bit on what it feels like to have reached 100 episodes. What do you think?
I'm so thrilled. I mean, I remember when I finished my first series, that's what it reminds me of, is when you hit that kind of a milestone, you're like, gosh, darn it, I did it. And why are we so obsessed as humans with round numbers? But besides that, I think it's so amazing that we managed to hit 100. We didn't count YouTube videos, did we? Do you know how many you had published?
So I think the first something like probably 25-ish YouTube video, or was actually YouTube videos that we turned into the podcast. Mm-hmm. But before then, there's probably 100 YouTube videos even before then. so
we're technically at 200 is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's huge. I know, but that's a huge accomplishment. It makes me feel real, I guess, is maybe the theory. Not professional, I already felt, but I'm not a newbie anymore. We deserve the little birthday cake with the candle and all that.
Yeah.
So how does it make you feel?
Yeah, well, I know I asked this question. I wrote to you and said let's talk about a bit about this in the beginning before we get into the actual questions that people have posted, and then afterwards, then I started thinking about it. What do I actually feel? And then I got a bit confused with myself because it's like I don't know. Maybe it sounds a bit weird. I don't know, but I am happy, of course, that we reached episode 100, and I know it is not a small feat to have had the podcast running for this long. There's a lot of podcasts out there that never even make it to episode 10.
Yeah,
so
that's very true.
Of course, that part I am happy about. So I'm not trying to say that I'm not, but there is a but here. You can probably hear, right?
I think I might have noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just, tell me if maybe I'm a bit weird, right? But it's just like I don't quite feel it being such a huge accomplishment, and I cannot put my finger on why. I mean, perhaps it just says something about my lack of ability to celebrate.
True, I did recently hear that your birthday was a little bit toned down, so no wild parties.
That it was as well. Yeah, it's like when I finish a writing project as well, I just jump on to the next one. or when we finish a course or something, we just jump on to the next one.
We never stop. And I was going to say I would definitely say, like, it doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like just the beginning. I mean, if we're in the 7 stages, we might have passed the intro and maybe we're beyond the inciting incident. Who knows? But we got a lot more to go. So it's a hill. It's not Everest yet, but it's kind of cool. Talk to us when we hit 1,000, and we'll see how we're doing then.
Oh my god! Yeah,
you better want to celebrate. We'll have to get together for the 1,000th episode. Oh, if I could say that. We only do podcasting, and I can't talk.
Yeah, it's usually I'm usually the one who can't talk, but no, but I think actually rather than waiting for 1,000, I think the real lesson here is that I really need to learn how to celebrate accomplishments because I'm not good at it. I'm really not good at it.
Oh, well, we'll have to find something to celebrate then and plan a party. Or if everyone joins Patreon, we guaranteed everyone that if we hit so many members, we would have a party. So that would be the other way to make you celebrate, is if everyone went and joined Patreon for $1 and we'd have to have a party.
Awesome.
There you go. Yeah. That would be awesome.
But also I think also just between the two of us, Autumn, once we finish building a course or we finished writing a book or something, we need to find a way to, at least in one way or another, celebrate a bit more that we accomplished something, because I don't know, I never do it. I just jump straight on to the next thing on my to-do list, and I sort of already forgot all the stuff I already did.
I think you also forgot that you're talking to the author who finished one book and started the next one the exact same day. So
yeah.
But I think you're right. I think maybe we'll have to rope in our spouses. Maybe we can rope in our listeners. When we're on different continents, this is not like we're in different states, because goodness knows I'm a long-distance traveler. If there was a way to drive to where you are, I would have driven there by now because I've gone over 100,000 miles in my car. So I can do that.
Yeah.
But there's that ocean. It's very pesky. I don't have a sailboat at the moment. But we need a way of celebrating virtually. So if anyone has fantastic celebration ideas, let us know in the comments. We're open to learning. We both need rehabilitation to be more celebratory.
No, I like that idea. That's good.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And while I might not be very good at celebrating, I do love recording this podcast. And I actually have a question for you, Autumn.
All right. Ooh.
Yeah, because I feel like we've had some great conversations on this podcast, and we've also had some great guests on.
Oh, we have.
But I was wondering, which one of the past 99 episodes which one was your favorite and why?
Well, oh, that's a good question. Off the top of my head, I would say if you talked about ones I'm most proud of, when you interviewed Joanna Penn, my heart's still like, oh my God, that's so amazing that she was on as our guest. But honestly, sincerely from my heart, my favorite episode was 69, My Journey as an Author, The Good and the Bad. Do you want to know why?
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Because that's one where you listed us as teaming up as one of your highlights as an author. And I just love that. So
Yeah.
I'm sentimental that way. So I just
No, that's good. No, I
I'm so
actually
fond of
remember
that.
it. Yeah. No,
All
that's
right. So
right.
what's
That's a
yours?
good pick. That's a damn good pick. Now I'm not sure I can do the same.
That's why I got to go first.
Yeah. Now you made my life difficult.
That is partially my role. You know?
Yeah, I noticed. I shouldn't have asked that question now.
You should have made me ask you that question.
I guess so. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've had so many good guests on, and there are so many to pick from. I mean, you mentioned Joanna Penn. We've had C.S. Lakin,
Yeah.
Jay Thorne and Zach Bohannon,
Oh yeah.
Mark Leslie Lefebvre. Who am I forgetting? Sasha Black. We had her on. Of course, Alexa Bigwaffe. I guess that's how you say it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
Kirsten Oliphant as well. I know I've probably forgotten a few names there, and I don't mean to. So sorry if any of the guests, past guests, are listening here. There's just so many to choose from.
Yes.
Yeah. And then there was also the kind of episodes where you and I do alternating lists.
So much
I like
fun.
those as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot to choose from, but if I have to choose only one, I think I would say probably episode 34. Do you know which one that is?
No, which one's that one?
It's actually not covering any topic at all. And it is not having any particular important guest on either.
What were we doing?
Yeah, well, I actually chose it because it was the episode where we announced that we were going to stop creating YouTube videos and turn this into a podcast.
Oh, that's a good one.
I just feel like I think that was the best one because I think that's the best decision we made.
I am not complaining. I really enjoy the podcast format more than I expected I would. But it's wonderful and it's great working with you. And so I think that one's a fantastic one.
Yeah. I still don't feel it's sort of it's as good as your pick. Okay.
Well, I have won a couple of our recent contests, so that's just the way it goes.
It's the way it goes, I guess. Yes.
Yes.
I can just feel honored that I'm doing the podcast with you since you're so good at it.
Oh, thank you. Well, I wouldn't be doing it at all if it wasn't for you. So there you go. It's a partnership.
Okay. Well, yeah, indeed. So we have some good questions.
Yes.
Some people gave us some audio files, and those are great. So we're gonna play those today.
Yes.
And we also got quite a number of questions sent in via text, emails, or somebody filled in the Google form that we announced previously, and so on. So I'm thinking we're just gonna go through them one by one, and then we're gonna both reply to all the questions, and that's it for today.
All right. Well, that sounds almost too easy, but I can't wait.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll try to just be a bit in the driver's seat here, not because I wanted to be a control freak, but just because then we make sure we get through all of them in a bit of an order. So that's the only reason.
And without taking an hour and a half. So
yeah, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But okay, let's just get started here. And the first question is from Said. And Said asks, what single work has most directly influenced your fantasy writing? What do you say about that?
I say that's a tough one. The one thing I can say came up to me is simply the short story by Anne McCaffrey on Dragon Impression. I can't even remember the name of it, and I know it's just a short story. So if you Google it, short story Anne McCaffrey, Dragon Impression. And it's funny because that's really not changing my fantasy writing, but if I hadn't read that is the story that hooked me on fantasy and dragons and took me on as a reader and opened up the whole genre to me. So if it wasn't for that one, I could be writing. My best friend loved mystery and Nancy Drew, so who knows, I could have fallen into that. But no, I write fantasy because of that short story. So how about you?
I don't think I've ever. Is it an old one, Autumn? Or?
It's I'm older than you, so yes, it is an old one. I read it in like elementary school.
I didn't mean to hint at that.
Yes, it is, and I would have to again go. It was in a compilation, but I think you can actually find it solo online now. It's that old.
Is it still any good, or is it one of those where it was good back then, but no, not anymore?
I haven't reread it, honestly. I just know I just absolutely fell in love. I mean, it was a little boy who wanted to become a dragon rider, and he ends up getting the bronze dragon, which next to the queen is like the top dragon to get. But I mean, it's sweet, and it has dragons. You get to, a dragon bonds with you, and so I don't want to reread it. It's just the memories of it. It's wonderful.
Okay. Okay. Well, for me, I would. Well, the question is influenced my writing, and there I would probably say Lord of the Rings. I know that's not very original, but I don't know. I really like Tolkien's writing. Well, everything except Tom Bombadil. but everything else, I really like his writing. But yeah, you were talking about getting hooked on fantasy. My love for the fantasy genre was not Tolkien. It actually started with Dragonlance.
Oh yeah,
those books really got me hooked on fantasy. And it's actually quite funny. Last week, this is not a new book either, but last week I was going through on the Kindle books on Amazon. And I can't remember why, but I was looking for some of the old Dragonlance books. Maybe it's because I'm reading them with my kids, so maybe that's why. I can't remember why I was looking through it, but then all of a sudden I noticed that there was a book about Raistlin. His earlier days. Yeah, so I bought that one. And I haven't started reading it yet, but I'm really looking forward to reading that one.
Yeah,
it's not new or anything. It's just me who I just haven't noticed it before.
yeah. Because I had read all of those up until I think we got into the Forgotten Realms or whatever, and at some point in the 20th book, I stopped reading, and so I've drifted away. But yeah, you'll have to let me know how that is, because I might want to revisit that world.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the next one, I have an audio recording of a question. So let's listen what Micah has to say.
How do you guys get and keep your inspiration?
So that was maybe a bit low, so let me just repeat. So Micah asks, how do we get and keep our inspiration?
All right. Oh, that's... Because I see that his entire one, he wanted to know, especially to complete a novel. So that is a tough one. I guess I think it's part of my personality. I'm a task-oriented, and I like to finish anything I start. When I was a studio artist, because I was painting way before I was writing, I would always finish anything I started because I started it. Of course I'm going to finish it. But to keep the inspiration going, I think you have to, for me, to keep it alive is I fall in love with the characters. To the point where they wake me up in the middle of the night. It's sometimes more alive to me than the world around me, which I actually think is a flaw. I thank goodness I have a husband and a dog, because I don't know, I'd be like the Lady of Shalott up in my tower and like daydreaming all day, instead of actually remembering that there's an actual world outside my door that I should go visit occasionally. So to me, I just live in my stories. I love my stories, and I was meant to be a writer and to tell these stories. And so that is how I keep the inspiration going, is by feeding them frequently with ideas and sing songs. And even with my husband, we play word games all the time. Thank goodness he likes literary things, or we probably still wouldn't be together after 20 years. So that's a good sign. But that's how I feed it. You have to feed your ideas, you feed your stories, you let your characters become so real that to let go of them, to not spend time with them, hurts. And so you keep writing.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
I might be slightly insane, but it's okay.
No. But I think for me, in terms of getting inspiration, I get it from everywhere. Sometimes I can wake up in the morning and then there's some sort of scene playing in my head, and I quickly have to write it down. So I always have a notepad next to my bed, because then I often get ideas when I sleep and when I wake up.
Yeah.
Other times, maybe I'm reading something or watching a movie, or there's just something that triggers me, and then I'll write that down as well. It can also be a podcast that I'm listening to. I must say that, yeah, my inspiration mostly come in the form of scenes or like concepts that I think are cool, and then I build from there. But I think as far as keeping the inspiration going, I have to do a bit of a shameless plug here, because in terms of keeping the inspiration going, we actually cover this in quite some detail in our guidebook about story ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So that one can be found on Amazon or everywhere else that you buy books. And by the way, if you instead buy the plotting book, it's called Plot Development. You can get the story idea book for free. There is a link inside that plotting book for it. But I'm saying all of that because once we have a solid premise, which is what we discussed in that book, how to develop, then once that is done, then we also know that we have something that is interesting enough to keep the story going until to the end. So yeah, I just had to do that plug there because I really think that really answers the question. That's how we keep it going.
That's true. That's a very good point.
Yeah. So we also had a question from Lisa. Perhaps you can read that one, Autumn.
Yes, I will read the question part because she had sent in a little bit of fun story as well. But we'll go with the question. Elisa asks, I often wonder what it is like to be so immersed in a story and then keep going. I know you have to decide to pull the plug because you would become sick of eating and drinking and sleeping about it, I'm sure. But don't you ever come up with another idea or thought and want to go back, or do you just move on? So, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, it does happen more often than not that I get another idea or think of a way to maybe... It could be a full other story idea, but it could also be just a way to expand on something that I'm already writing, that, it would be cool if it was like this and that as well. And then that sort of sparks a side story or something almost. But I think I've found that it is far more efficient to avoid the temptation in the situation. Just write it down, that idea that you got, so you don't forget about it, and then keep going with what you originally were working upon. Because unless it's something that I can fix like in a few minutes, like if it's just an idea like, oh, okay, cool if I did like this and that, and I can just add one more paragraph or something, that is fine, then I'll do it right away. But otherwise, I'll leave it for the editing stages. Mm-hmm. So I think when first drafting, at least, it saves a lot of time, and the faster I can make the writing go during first draft, the better for me. But I also think for the reader, because at the end of the day, the book will be done more quickly that way. So I know exactly what Lisa means. I know what you mean by the question, Lisa. But I think it's best to avoid the temptation. But I don't know if you agree with that, Autumn.
No, I agree, because I was going to say just sort of like what I said. I don't mind eating and drinking and just living in this story to the point where sometimes I forget the real world exists. If it wasn't for like having to adult occasionally and make money and those sorts of things, go to the grocery store, if I wasn't the cook in the family, I would probably forget to eat occasionally. I honestly would. I can get so wrapped up in this stuff. But yeah, I do sometimes think of other ideas, or like if it's an idea for the current book I'm writing, I will go back, and if it's something I've already written, I'll just highlight and do a comment. If it's something that's further ahead because I have all my stories and chapters outlined, I'll just put a note in that chapter outline, and when I get there, I'll put it in where it needs to be, or I'll fix it in the editing. But if it's a completely different story, because I'm a bit of a pantser/plotter, I'm a hybrid. So I will just simply take a note. There's no idea that can come to me that is so fully fledged that I can just jump to it, because I would want to spend time with it. I want to get to know the characters. I need to plot it out. I need to figure out the world and world build and develop. There's so much work that goes into wanting to start a story that I don't ever just jump to it, except if I happen to be getting close to finishing a series. I have learned it's a lot less painful if I let go of my characters gently, and I've already started world building and writing and developing the other story. So this is me. I have written 3 books, 3 3 things at the same time. So, but usually I have one main story and I start on a second plot. You and I are going to be writing together, plus I'm writing on my own. So I do a lot of writing, but I find that works. I'm very, very compartmentalized in my mind. So I can just, open up that file cabinet and go right in and spend lots of time in this wonderful, they're magical filing cabinets. I don't want it to sound boring. They're like, you open it up and there's a whole little world in there and it's really exciting and, there's stars. So it's not one of those boring office ones. It's magical. But that's how I do it. If it's a really good idea, I take copious notes, I put it aside, I start developing it on the side. And if it's really, really good, eventually it becomes a side project. And when the main one finishes, it becomes the next one.
Very good. So next question is from Mark Justin. Right. So Mark says, one time I showed someone my writing. They said it felt more fitting to call it a visual novel script than a traditional story. What's one way to make the writing flow better and not feel like a bunch of text? This is right down your alley, Autumn.
It is. It's also a tough one. But so the thing is, it depends on what they meant by visual novel. I mean, do you have mostly dialogue? Do you have mostly information? But to bring it alive is to bring the world to life. Do you want to just kind of suck the reader into a character's head? So you need to choose a point of view, and we call it a deep point of view, that you feel like you are sitting inside of a character's head and you sense whatever they sense. So that's not just seeing, which is where the visual comes from, but you want to know what they're smelling. What are they touching, tasting? What do they feel? You want to know the emotions, so that other sense as well is there. Once you can pull that world and bring it to life so that you can describe the character walking through the forest and they hear the crunch of the leaves, they smell the wet earth of the ferns and the moss, and they feel the wind on their skin. When you have that text that is building those layers of the world up to the reader, and you're sharing the dialogue and you're having all of that, that's going to make it flesh out that world really well.
Yeah, all the stuff around the emotion or like senses and stuff, that was also where I was going. But I would say on top of that, I encourage you to listen to our recent episode 98, actually, because we talked about the top mistakes that new authors make in that episode. And there's quite a few tips and tricks there that I think you will find useful. Mark, you also said that it should not feel like a bunch of text. This might not have been what you meant by it, but when you said that, it sort of just made me think about info dumps. These large blocks of text where you just explain something to the reader. That might not be at all what you meant by a bunch of text, but on top of the situation around senses that Autumn just explained so well, I think it is important that you also find ways in which to deliver those kind of world building information through the actions of the characters or through dialogue, because at least when it comes to making the writing flow better, that makes a huge difference.
Yes.
Just before we started recording, I was just talking to Autumn about a book that I recently. I'm not going to say which book it was, because then somebody might get mad at me.
No,
I was just explaining how there was chapters of info dumping, and it's really not. It does not flow very well. Yeah, and I checked some of the Amazon reviews as well, and they pointed it out, not always so politely, but that's exactly what they about. Yeah, but okay, I think that one is probably covered there. So we have another audio file that I'm gonna play now.
Autumn and Jesper, congratulations on your 100th podcast. You guys are really dedicated, and you are an inspiration, I think, to us all. You are to me. Anyway, I've got a question. What methods do you two turn to de-stress, or at least try to, when taking a break during a particularly difficult period of problematic writing?
That's a good one.
De-stress.
We live on stress.
Well, honestly, I was just thinking, I don't know if I'm the best one to answer this one because I really never struggled that much with feeling stressed. I know I'm lucky in that way, but I really don't feel it. Maybe I'm just not in tune with my own emotions or something. I don't know, but I don't really feel stressed. But what I can say though is I do like to go for a walk. I try to do that most days of the week, and I also 3 times a week in the morning before I do anything else. I run 5 kilometers before I start my workday, and then in the evenings I do like to relax watching Netflix, HBO, or Amazon or something like this. And so I guess you could say that helps to de-stress myself, but I don't know. As I said, I'm not the best one to answer this one. So I hope you have something good to say. I'm counting on you now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm starting to think my writing partner is actually an AI, but I know you're not. So, it's a tough one, and it really depends on what's causing stress. I am definitely a little bit of a masochist, so if something's bothering me, I sometimes dig in. My mom calls it stubborn. I call it dedicated. And, so sometimes, if I'm really hitting a wall, but I just haven't been trying that long, and I've, maybe been sitting down for 15 minutes, and I'm like, no, I am a writer. This is my job. This is my career. So I'll start doing like what if questions, or I'll write down the problem I'm having, and then I'll see, do some brainstorming, writing right into the novel, and then just delete it later of, what needs to happen. Why am I stuck? But I agree. Sometimes writing, cooking, obviously I love food, so that can be very inspirational. And it does seem as soon as I get involved in something very complicated that my hands are covered in goo and I'm like, oh, that's the answer. I need a dictation device really badly. Sometimes I don't mind a little bit of wine, I like rum and I like scotch. Those are little go-tos. I'll sit down with that and stare at my computer a little bit longer. But sometimes it's like, okay, I look at the dog looks at me, and I'm like, walkies, and we go for a walk, and when the world all has been a better place, and I forget about everything, and once we're back from playing in the stream and hunting for frogs, I'll get back to work, and it's usually a little bit better. I have hit a few spots. If I've worked on a chapter and I'm on the same chapter for, I'd say 3 days. 3 days, if I'm on the same chapter for 3 days, I feel like it's been too long, it's going on forever, and I'm stuck, and I'll sometimes just write a couple sentences and just go to the next one, and then come back and fix it later. And
I couldn't get that picture out of my mind of just sitting there with a glass of wine staring at the screen. It's like totally stuck.
Next time it happens, I'll have my husband take a picture for you.
Yeah.
We'll see what look
I'm
on my
sitting
face.
here waiting for inspiration. I know it's going to come sooner or later. Cheers.
No worries.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so we have another question from Zaid, and perhaps you can take this one, Autumn.
Yeah, so Zaid also asked, which part of the journey from concept to publication do you hate the most? So what's your least favorite part?
Yeah, this was not that difficult for me. But this is also why we have divided the workload between us the way we have, because I hate the most is editing. I really like the result of the editing. I love when the first draft turns into something that flows really nicely and all the words are sounding good and that stuff. I love that part. But I hate going through it because it is so painfully slow, and it annoys the crap out of me when I spent 3 hours and I've only edited one chapter. I hate it. That's why I get Autumn to do the editing.
And that's why editing is not my answer.
Yeah.
And this one was a tough one for me because what I hate the most is after publication. I hate AMS ads or anything that requires going back and fine-tuning. If you happen to have read my Patreon post for today, it happened to have resonated really well with this question. I am just not that good at sitting down and fine-tuning and looking at iteration after iteration after iteration and just sticking with it and not feeling like I'm panicking because I'm wasting money or it's not going anywhere. Spreadsheet results, statistics, calculus, algebra. I love mathematics. except for statistics. Statistics are not mathematics. They should just be burned. But so when it comes to those stuff, when you're boiling down results into numbers, and I know it's important, but my brain just goes, it just goes up in flames. So that's why I have you handle it. But since that came technically after the publication, and that's what he asked, I would say to fit the parameters of Zaid's question, my least favorite part is simply the time it takes. I love these stories and I want to spend so much time, and I'm task oriented, and I just want to sit down, and it's like my day off, my birthday, people ask, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want to write. It's like, well, that's not going to get me anywhere because I'll just be another 2,000 words closer to my 100,000. And then I'm going to start another novel, and I'm never going to be done until I take my last breath. And then I swear my ghost will keep writing. So, it's the time. I want to be able to write these stories out so much faster. I want that 1 hour, extra hour that I'm writing on my birthday, to mean something more than a drop in a bucket. But it doesn't.
Yeah, there's a loop back to the conversation about celebration here as well.
Yeah, there might be. Oh, we gotta work on that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into the next question.
Yes.
This one is from Philippe. So Philippe says, as I outline a serial, the setting I am drawn to keeps constantly morphing. Time period, magic, predominance, levels of tech, aesthetics, etc. To the point that it halts progress. What to do? Should I commit to something even if something else is more interesting? How do I block the influx of influences? That's a good one.
That is a good one. Can I just say yes?
Yes.
Yes, that is my answer is yes. But yes, you have to choose one. You have to make that decision, and even if you doubt it later, you have to make it the best thing you can. And as an example, I was writing the 6th book in one of my World of Mirror, my Elemental Magic series. And I think I was halfway through, and I'm like, you know what? I really actually have started bonding with the villain who up till then I didn't like in the 6th book. And I suddenly saw his perspective, and I thought, oh my gosh, this book, I could tell it totally from his view. He is totally right. Everyone else is completely wrong for trying to stop him. And I'm like, well, I'm not rewriting the entire series. That idea is still in me, and I still think, oh, I could bring him back and do something so cool with him. But I had to let it go because I had to make that decision. You have to keep going. If you're going to write a book, you got to write the book and take those ideas that you think are so cool and put them aside and write a book with those. But you do just have to make that decision. You have to stick to it. You've got to write the book and just try to save up the other inspiration for something later.
Yeah. It almost sounds to me, Philippe, that you need to spend a bit of more time in that wonderful place of world building. Because, if you're saying that your concepts aren't clear and you sort of come up with things on the fly, that you struggle with consistencies, you're going to create quite a lot of editing work for yourself. So I think it's probably better if you try to spend a bit more time in the world building phase here.
Mm-hmm.
Autumn and I always complete the world building, nailing down the setting before we start writing, because this allows us to inform the writing with details that actually, quite honestly, we could never have thought of during the writing itself. So try to separate the world building from your outline. It almost sounds like you're sort of doing both in parallel here, but see if you can spread them or separate them. So you do all your world building first, and then you work on your outline. I think then your experience with everything keep morphing won't happen so much now, because then you already know your world, you know your setting, you know what you want there to be there, and then you can work on your outline and make that influence the outline. Mapping out your story once you have that firm grasp of your setting, I think that'll help a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we then have another question from Corey.
Yes. All right. Corey asked, what is the most effective way to overcome writer's block? I've tried reading, and then I've trying to write right after, listening to audiobooks while writing, listening to music, meditating. Nothing seems to work, and I haven't written in nearly 3 weeks now. So what are some tips you can give me?
I'm sorry to hear that, Corey.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
I feel with you. A lot of authors are struggling with things like that, so please don't feel alone. I think my number one tip is outlining. I know some people don't like outlining. That's why we wrote a whole guidebook on how to outline to help some of those people. Because if you try to map out your story in advance, I would say 99% of the times where authors experience writer's block, it's because they don't know what needs to happen next. So they get stuck and they're like, well, I don't quite know where this is going. I don't know what I want it to happen. And if I think of something, is that exciting enough? Does it hit the right tropes, or does it, sync up with the character arc, and so on and so on? So yeah, as mentioned earlier in this episode, Autumn and I wrote a full step-by-step guide on how to plot a novel. So you can go and search for our names on Amazon if you want to have a check out that book if you want. But you don't have to. You can also try to go about it on your own if you want. But I would say try to spend some time, outlining and understanding your story, Corey. I feel that will probably help you.
Yes, I agree. And definitely, it's, I always love that quote, an author who isn't writing is courting madness. I mean, it just itches under our skin, and it seems to reinforce itself. So, I mean, she's tried a lot of things I'd suggest, other than a little bit of wine. Works for me. But another good thing, so if nothing else is working, I agree. Come up with some what if questions, especially if you're stuck with a chapter, like what's supposed to happen in the chapter. Look at how to set up that chapter, what is happening, what's the hook, what is going to be starting, what's the character's goals. Look through all that. Do some brainstorming questions about what's going on. Try to read whatever, think about this character, think about the character's arc. What they just do, what are they trying to accomplish? Sometimes, just to sink into their heads, I will switch. If I'm writing in third person, which is how I prefer to write, maybe I'll do a quick sentences in first person. Try to talk about what they're seeing, feeling, thinking right then, even if I end up cutting it later. Just trying to force my head into this characters and the world and what is happening in the novel. And usually something in there will give finally, and I can just go and I will be able to write. And sometimes there's a few pieces of gold and you get to do some great setting or world building that you hadn't, you might not have come up with otherwise, and you can keep them. But honestly, a lot of the times you're just doing some brainstorming that you're probably going to end up deleting, but you'll be writing. So that's the important thing.
Yeah. Okay, good. We have another question from Anthony. So Anthony asks, I've heard a lot about various points of views, but when I do research on them, I only find the basics. So the question is, how do you decide which point of views best fit your story? And if you're using multiple point of views, which character is the best for that scene? A second question, if you're writing in multiple point of views, how do you make sure your character voices are distinct?
All right.
That's a good question.
That is a very good question. Those are both very good questions, and it's hard to break them down. And so I would say first, when you're writing your book, you and I both write in multiple point of views. We love having different characters because I think it adds to a complicated plot. But there is nothing wrong with having just one point of view. The Hobbit is a great example. It's in pretty much one point of view. It's withstood this test of time. There's nothing wrong with that. So do consider that if you're feeling really challenged, try to stick to just one character point of view. Try to do a deep point of view, which is you're not omniscient. You don't know everything going around. You just know what is that one character can look, see, feel, and hear. So you can't, foreshadow with anything that they wouldn't know, which is one reason you add in other point of views, because then you can add those in other places and build tension for the reader that way. To choose which one to use, you don't want to use too many. You and I have written, we have a course on this, and we have a whole character development course. So it really talks to you about how many characters you should have and how to develop their voice. But you don't want to have too many either. You don't want to be, 12 characters in the first book or something. 4 is fine. 6 is getting a little too many, especially even if you have 100,000 words. You don't want to have too many. The reader is supposed to bond with these characters. If you have too many, you're jumping all over. They're not going to know. You never want the reader confused. You want to give them very solid points of view, so that they can bond with the characters, that they feel the emotions of the characters, they're rooting for the characters, and you can't do that when you have 16 different characters. Unless you're George R.R. Martin and you're writing something that takes 4 decades. Then maybe you can do it, but otherwise, no. And to choose which one, you want to go with whoever has the most impact. So you would choose the character who maybe is doing the action in the scene, or maybe the character who's going to have the most emotional cliffhanger at the end of it. But you want to make sure that it's also the one that's going to tell the story. And you want to make sure every character has, 3 to 4 to 5 chapters in their point of view. If you're only having a 1 chapter point of view with a character, don't use it. You can't tell a character arc in just 1 chapter, and any character who has a point of view definitely needs a character arc. So you're going to have at least 3 to 5 chapters minimum for each of these point of view characters. So that's going to flesh out your novel really quick. They're going to have subplots. They're going to have things going on. It's all going to tie back into the main plot. It's a lot of outlining. So 1 character, 1 point of view is fine for a novel if you want to keep things simple and sum up ways of keeping your character voices distinct. You're going to have to find out what works for you. Some of the things I've suggested is if you come up with a totem for each character, or sometimes I've written in colors. This character is always in red. Even in Scrivener, all my characters, I actually use character colors so I know whose point of view I'm in. So that's fine. You can choose colors. You can choose a totem so you know this one's wily, so you always think of a fox. I've had characters who, I listen to a song and it gets me into their mood. And also think about, distinct things that they would have, either actions or phrases. Like if you have a sailor, they're going to call tension like a taut rigging line, where if someone else is a mercenary, they're always going to be referring to things as ways of battle tactics. Once you learn to develop those character phases and the lens that they see the world in, then you're going to have that distinctive voice coming out for each character. That was long. I'm sorry.
No, I think you basically covered the entire thing there.
I tried.
That was good. I think the only thing I would add is, of course, that plot development book, actually the entire first section of that book covers these questions. But the only thing I would add on top of what you just said, which I fully agree with, is that think a bit about which characters are going to spend a lot of time together in the same scenes. For example, if you have like a Frodo and Sam kind of situation where they spend most of the story together, then I would say avoid making Sam a character, like a point of view character, because it's simply going to be challenging to keep it interesting. Because what are you going to do? Explain the same scene two times all the time? Because you see what I mean, right? That it does not work. So just think a bit about where our characters going to be throughout the story and how much time are they going to spend together. And where you have them spending a lot of time together, then avoid one of them being a point of view character at least.
Agreed.
But otherwise, I agree with all the stuff that Autumn said. Yeah. Okay, final question and also final audio clip of the day.
Hey guys, thanks so much for picking my question up. Really appreciate it. And if I can, I just want to start by thanking you so much for running the podcast. It is pretty much the highlight of my week. Absolutely loving it. And the online communities that you're running on Patreon and Facebook have helped me more than I can say over the last year. Thank you so much. Okay, so in terms of my question, it's this. Jesper, what do you most like about Autumn's writing? And Autumn, what do you most like about Jesper's writing?
Thank you for that question, Said. I really also appreciate the kind words, not only from you, but also from James and everybody else who sent us really kind words. So thank you for that. But I really like this question. When I heard it first, Said, I was like, oh, okay, that was a good one. I didn't expect that.
I like that one too. All right. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I can actually mention two things.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, because the two things I like the most about your writing, Autumn, is first of all, I like how you describe scenery. You're really good at making it sound interesting. At the same time, you are able to conjure up images in my mind about what the places are, what it looks like.
Mhm.
So that's something you're really good at, and I really like that. But even more, probably, I like your ability to do character development. I feel like you're able to breathe a lot of life into the characters in a way that makes them come off as individuals rather than just some cardboard people who run around doing some actions. They feel more like real people with their own motivations. So you're just a really good writer.
Oh, thank you very much. I was going to actually mention I like your characters too, because I like how we're both no nonsense people, I think. And so your stories and your writing doesn't get bogged down. I just told you before we started recording that I'd read a book, and there was times that this character got so bogged down in dresses and things that I'm just not that type of girl. And I like that you keep things moving. And I love that your first trilogy has women as the main characters, and it's you did that you did a great job with it. You went for a lot of action, and it's interesting, and it's a different world, and we both made the fun, not quite mistake of very different worlds and very tough stories as our first. We have such similar tactics, and I'm just like, this is cool. I didn't know all of this when we started out on this journey of writing fantasy together. It kind of, I don't know, we kind of lucked out. I can't complain.
Yeah, I think so.
But and that's what I like is our storylines and our way of tackling things meshes incredibly well, and that's to me just so exciting. You talk to so many other authors, and they have such differences that they have a hard time writing together, and I think we're going to be just fine because we like each other's style, and we have very similar kind of action-based, exciting adventures where gender isn't an issue and race isn't an issue, and we tend to, I think yours might have a little bit more of a darker tone, and mine goes more toward noble bright, but I think we're going to combine this into something amazing.
Yeah, I agree. So this was a lot of fun.
I'm
glad we turned episode 100 into Q&A session like this. I think this was really good.
It was a lot of fun, and thank you so much for all the questions. And I did have one for you, even though we're running long on time.
Uh-oh.
Recently, you discovered an Easter egg of how I got into writing and self-publishing. And I was wondering, now you know how I did, I was wondering, what got you into self-publishing and made you finally sit down and become a writer?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Fine. I will answer that, but actually, you have to explain your own as well for the listeners.
I'll do it
because
afterwards.
Otherwise, they have no idea.
I will.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, it was more like so. I've always had this idea for like many, or not always, but for many years, I've had this idea that one day, once I retired, then I could write some stories, and then. Usually most years, not every year, but most years, our family goes to Finland for summer vacation. And in Finland, we rent a summer cottage, and there you spend quite a lot of time, going in sauna and relaxing and stuff like that. And then there was this one evening back in 2015 when I was sitting in that sauna. I don't remember if my wife was out swimming or whatever, but I was alone there, and I was sitting there, and I started thinking, like, why is it that I've gotten into my head that I can only write once I get to retirement? Why couldn't I just write something? I might not be very fast at it because I have to do day jobs and whatnot, but I could just write a bit here and there. Well, why couldn't I just start? And why am I feeling limited? And actually, the next morning, I got a laptop out, and I started writing.
Wow.
It was a complete nightmare and mess, and it has been deleted many times over since. But I started writing the next day, and I never stopped since then.
That's wonderful. I love that. All right,
Yeah.
but yeah, so to explain, since no one else got to, only a few people would have heard my other story, but I had something similar. I mean, I was actually an artist very long in my life. Since like I was 4, I wanted to be an artist, but I always actually wrote on the side, all the way down to my mother having recently shown me a journal I'd kept actually as a kid, and my husband then stole and secreted away because I was going to burn it. It was so horrible, but I didn't really take it seriously. But I had a habit of writing in notebooks in college because I was so bored in school, even in college, even with an English degree, and I'd write stories in my notebook, and my husband found one and said, "Oh my gosh, you wrote this. This is fantastic. You should write." And he encouraged me, and he actually sent me an article on self-publishing with a woman who is in a similar job in a similar agency as I was working in at the time. And he's the reason I published my first book.
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't
I like
it?
that story. Yes.
It's all his fault.
Right. Okay, so next Monday I have a great interview lined up for you, and it's concerning one of my favorite topics, not map making this time, but world building.
Oh.
If you like what you just heard, there's a few things you can do to support the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast. Please tell a fellow author about the show and visit us at Apple Podcast and leave a rating and review. You can also join Autumn and Jasper on patreon.com/AmWritingFantasy. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get awesome rewards and keep the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast going. Stay safe out there and see you next Monday.